Welcome back. Mark Carney is running for Prime Minister, but apparently he's also running from the media. He claims he helped balance Canada's budget while he was busy studying at Oxford, and he swears he had nothing to do with Brookfield moving to New York, even though his name is right there on the letter. So why is he dodging questions, and why do Liberals keep getting away with this? Tom Korski, managing editor of Blacklocks Reporter, joins us once again. Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Richard.
So the claim that he helped balance the budget during Paul Martin's tenure, I mean, that's demonstrably false. Why does he think he can get away with that?
I guess it was a long time ago, and perhaps he was enamored with his own story. Everyone knows a storyteller. The bars are full of guys like this. What did he say? In a televised candidates debate last Tuesday, I quote him accurately, "It was my privilege to work with Paul Martin when he balanced the books and kept the books balanced," end of quote, he said. And then he went on to talk about what an important lesson that was in terms of prudent management of precious taxpayer dollars, he called them. It was a beautiful speech. The problem is that Paul Martin introduced serious federal cuts in the 1995 budget. I know because I was there. And this led to a balancing of the budget for the first time since 1969, 3 years later in 1998. So there's our markers, 1995, 1998, Ottawa, Canada. You'll never guess who wasn't in Eastern Ontario that 3-year period. Mark Carney. He was getting his economics degrees at Oxford, and then he was working for Goldman Sachs in New York and London, and he had a fascinating career. None of which involved budget cuts in 1995 or a balanced budget in 1998. I guess saying I was a tag-along Charlie 6 years after the budget was balanced when he went to work for the Department of Finance doesn't have the same cachet. It doesn't have that same punch, Richard. So it's a better story to say I was there in the moment of blood, sweat, and tears. But he wasn't.
Then there's his tenure as chair of Brookfield Asset Management, and they made the decision to move headquarters to New York City. He resigns from the chairmanship in January of this year and says he has nothing to do with that, except, unfortunately, there's the matter of his signature on the letter urging Brookfield Asset Management to move to New York. So he lies, he gets caught, and then I guess they circle the wagons at that point. How damaging is that one?
Well, as one Conservative MP, Michael Baird from Leeds Grenville, Ontario, said, there seems to be a pattern here, exactly what you pointed out, Richard. Weeks before he resigned the chairmanship of this very large company, Carney did sign, there's his name and his signature on a letter to shareholders, saying it's a great idea to move this office to New York. It's in the best interest of shareholders, he said. Not too much about Canada. Why does that matter? Because Carney gave a speech about Canada that was just so moving. It was more moving even than his the day I helped Paul Martin balance the budget speech, which was pretty good speech if you didn't know your facts. And he talked about, I'm all in for Canada. Canada, I can't go on too much about my strong feelings about Canada. That's all fine. What did MP Barrett say? He said, it's a funny thing, you start to see the pattern. I like to take credit for the good things. I had nothing to do with the bad things, even if I put my name to them. And by the way, I'm not taking any more questions. And that's where we are.
And yet, even his own adversaries, or let me put it this way, even the others that are running for the Liberal leadership, Karen Gould and Chrystia Freeland, Baylis, I mean, they're not jumping all over this. I mean, they're supposed to be running against this guy. What's going on there?
Well, it's funny you should say. There's actually a code of conduct. Did you know that? There's a leadership contestants code of conduct the party has issued. They actually put this in black and white. Let me look it up. What does it say? It says that all dialogue must be respectful, And it goes on further to say, this is my favorite part, Richard. I'm quoting, an individual's dignity and human rights must always be respected. This means being considerate, respectful, collaborative, and refraining from intimidating, God bless them, harassing, abusive, discriminatory, derogatory, or demeaning conduct. End of quote. If you hear anyone hurting another candidate's feelings, report it immediately. So help me, this is on the level. I'm reading from their code of conduct. This is beautiful. There's just one problem. When you go into a general election, you'll never guess, Richard, there's no code of conduct. And there will be people who will definitely question Mark Carney's dignity, his human rights, and express phrases about him that are intended to be intimidating, harassing, and abusive. It's called a general election campaign. Hello, this is his future, but right now, this is why you do not hear other candidates expressing incredulity about his conduct.
I mean, doesn't that just reinforce the notion that this really is just a coronation?
Oh, hands down, he's raised a lot of money. He has had a succession of private meetings. They won't even say the people he's meeting with. He had a fundraiser in Ottawa on Saturday. We don't know where. We don't know how much he raised. And then he'll be prime minister on Sunday, the 9th. That's when they vote, and it would be astonishing if he doesn't win. And good for them. It's their party. They can do whatever they like. But there is a problem. As you and I have discussed in the past, Richard, Parliament runs out of money on Monday, the 31st of March. That's the end of the budget year. Problem number 2, he will face an immediate vote of confidence, according to the Democrats, who are the hinge vote, and faces the imminent prospect of a general election where it's no holds barred. No one will care about your feelings.
The other big lie he just told, I think he was in Bradford at a bar, and we'll have David Menzies on a little bit later to talk about that, or I don't know if he was in a bar or a pub or wherever it was in Bradford. But he made another outrageous claim, something about Canada responsible for the majority of semiconductors that are going into the United States, that we produce the vast majority of semiconductors, and we could use that as leverage in this tariff war. The only problem is, I think someone did the calculation, it's about 0.8%, so not even 1% of the semiconductors that go into the United States are produced in Canada. So there he goes again. I mean, is this just, is he getting like bad advice? Is this his the communications people around him, or is this just like a serious character flaw with this guy?
I think it is a lack of a political experience. Richard, there are a lot of politicians who like to tell stories. There's nothing really wrong with that. And sometimes when you tell a story, you forget that there's an internet and there are people who know how to do Google searches and maybe understand the Taiwanese semiconductor business better than you do, or maybe who were in a budget lockup 30 years ago and know that you weren't in that room. And so what happens is politically inexperienced public office holders will fall into this trap of telling fanciful or embellished accounts in which I emerge somehow as smarter or of higher character than the typical moke that you see on the street. I think that's Carney's problem. If he'd ever run for school board, it doesn't have to be high office, just county school board, he would have the experience of dealing with people who don't think you're so hot, calling you when you tell a story that isn't true. But Carney's never had that experience. It certainly never came up at a bankers meeting. That's his problem.
No, good luck with that in the general election, Mr. Carney. Foreign Minister Melanie Joly has declared that Canada is in a security crisis due to U.S. President Donald Trump and claims the CBC is just as crucial to defending democracy as Parliament and the courts, and she insists the strong state-funded media is necessary to counter American influence and ensure Canadian sovereignty. She said that out loud, Tom. Is this just political fear-mongering? What is she on about?
I think it's an interesting worldview, isn't it? Quebec Liberals are the best friends the CBC ever had. I always say, as long as there's an audience of one, a Quebec Liberal heritage minister, the CBC will go on for 1,000 years. There is no doubt that Quebecers see public broadcasting as a bulwark in protection of culture and language rights, etc. Everyone understands that. It's dead, CBC, in the English language audience. The numbers speak for themselves, the crashing ad revenues. But I think there is also a key to happiness, isn't there? We should all know our own limitations. And I don't think in this case, the foreign minister of a G7 country does. When you would have Minister Joly say that there are three bulwarks that will save our country in a security crisis. One is Parliament. The other is the courts. I don't know what she means. And the third is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Are you serious? Seriously, are you drinking cough syrup? What would lead you to believe the CBC is going to save us or save our democracy? And that's what she said. It's the legislative branch, the courts, and the media, she said. If you weaken all three, of course you have an issue with your democracy. I think we're now in an emergency. These are comments she made to the Vancouver Board of Trade. And the CBC, the journalists of the CBC, were right up there. You can't just have social media platforms to have a democracy. You have to have CBC, she said. How's that for a worldview out of 1985? Unbelievable.
So she's suggesting that social media alone isn't enough for democracy. Does this maybe hint at potential government intervention or regulation, further regulation of online platforms?
Well, they'd like to try. You and I have talked about this. They've tried two bills now. The last one lapsed in January. They've tried many, many times since 2021, and they failed each time because of free speech advocates. But how is that for a binary choice, Richard? This is the worldview of your foreign minister. She scans the media landscape, and she comes to one conclusion. There's two media outlets. There's Twitter, and there's the CBC. That's it. There's no independent press. There's no SAUGA radio. There's no, county weeklies. There's no United Grain Growers Guide. It's just the two. I've scanned this is a former heritage minister. I just see the two outlets, CBC and Elon Musk. Good night, everybody. I mean, you got to be a little more sophisticated than that.
Tom Korski, Managing Editor, Blacklocks Reporter. Support independent media, blacklocks.ca to subscribe, blacklocks.ca. Tom, always a pleasure. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Richard.
Hey, this is Richard Syrett. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe.